my name's Tim Anderson. I work at Cass Business School, which is part of City University in London. I am the Marketing and Recruitment Manager for the MSc program. It's just a short presentation just to answer a few questions that always get asked at events like this when people are looking into postgraduate business courses, because there are a lot of different options you can do within the MSc and MBA field. So it's not very long, so it won't be too long and boring. So I'll run through it, and then if anybody's got any questions, you can ask at the end, or feel free to stick your hand up while I'm talking away, and let's make this interactive, and you can ask me questions. That's fine. Okay, so the MBA, which stands for Master of Business Administration. As it says, it's the world's most popular postgraduate qualification. Every year, just in the US, you have 90,000 people graduating, and in the UK, which is obviously a much smaller country, we have 10,000 people graduating, and obviously there's a lot more business schools outside of the US and the UK, throughout Europe, Australia, Latin America, Asia. So hundreds of thousands of people graduating with an MBA every year, basically. So the MBA began in the USA. The USA is traditionally the home of business schools, so obviously they first started teaching the MBA back in the 1900s. Then it came across to Europe in the 60s. In the 1960s in the UK, you had a lot of new business schools starting up. The one I worked for started in the 60s, people like Warwick, Manchester, London Business School. That was when business schools really started coming on stream in the UK. So then the UK started, and the rest of Europe started teaching MBAs in the 60s. Normally, the MBA is a general management degree, so you study a range of different business-related topics. The idea is to be a senior manager, you have to have a strategic overview of all the different things and the functions that go on within a business enterprise. So you need to know how finance integrates with human resources, and that works together with marketing and with the operations management side of things. So to be a senior manager, you've got to understand all that. So the MBA takes that sort of holistic approach, and you study all those different areas of business. Having said that, there are MBAs around that you can specialize in. There's been a few interesting ones. There used to be one in France, so up in Bordeaux, which was to do with viniculture and wine making, which is quite a niche one. Obviously in Bordeaux, because that's a big wine region in France. I don't think they run that anymore, though, because the problem is so niche, there weren't that many people wanting to do it. Once everybody had graduated, everybody from that sector taught that program. But there are other ones to do with things as wide-ranging as finance, or things as specialised as football management. There used to be one around a few years ago in football management. Some football managers studied the MBA and helped them with managing football teams. There tends to be a few differences between an MBA in the US and an MBA in Europe. In the US, an MBA is normally 2 years long. In the UK and most of the rest of Europe, they're normally 1 year long. Now, there are exceptions. London Business School, for example, have a 2-year MBA, but London Business School is fairly unusual in the UK. It's quite similar to an American school. It isn't part of a university. It stands alone, that sort of thing. But I even think at Manchester Business School, they used to have an 18-month MBA. I'm not sure if they still have it. They might have it. There's somebody at Manchester Business School outside, so if you wanted to ask them about that, you can. But normally, an MBA in the UK and the rest of Europe is normally a 1-year program, normally a 12-month program. Some places start in January, but most places start in September. Also, though, that's the full-time program, which if you come to the UK to study, that would probably be the one that you would go on, because you can't really get a student visa for part-time study. But a full-time program is what most Brazilian students would be doing in the UK. But there are other alternatives, like an executive MBA. For Cass, for example, we have an executive MBA. Most business schools have executive MBAs as well. Those are taught on a part-time basis, so you would carry on working whilst you studied if you're doing an executive MBA. Either you study in the evenings, so you'd be working during the day, then every Tuesday or Thursday evening, something like that, you would come into the business school and have classes. Or another option that's quite popular now is the modular MBA. So you would be working all week, then 1 weekend a month usually. You would come in from sort of a Friday through to a Monday and working on Saturday and Sunday as well. And you would study one particular subject area intensively over that weekend. Then you'd go away for a month. You'd have a lot of reading to do to absorb what you've just studied, and then preparation for next month's module as well. And next month you do another module. And they generally last for about 2 years normally, because it takes twice as long as the full-time version, because you're obviously not doing it as intensively. Then you've got distance learning programs. Again, schools that are here today, like Warwick and Manchester, have very strong distance learning MBA programs. And in the UK, you've also got people like the Open University that do distance learning. And obviously, there's a lot of American places that'll do that as well. So that's another option if you wanted to stay, living in Brazil, carry on working, but wanted to study an MBA as well. Obviously, distance learning, you miss out some of the teamwork and interaction with other students that you get on a full-time program, but it can give you some flexibility, to fit it in around your work. And usually, distance learning programs will involve some contact time. You may have to come over for a week or a couple of long weekends per year or something like that as well. So that's another option to bear in mind. And consortium ones, they're getting more and more popular now, where a group of business schools will teach. So there is things like London Business School do one with Columbia in New York. So sometimes you're going to be in London, sometimes you're going to be in New York. London School of Economics do one in partnership with New York University and HEC, which is in Paris. So you'd be sometimes in London, sometimes in New York, sometimes in Paris. So that's a really international experience then. You'll be going to doing some modules in one country and some modules in another. So those are other versions of the MBA that you can consider. Then the MSc. These are very popular in Europe now. There's been a real boom in MSc courses in the last 10 years or so. At CAS, for instance, where I work, we have 17 MSc courses teaching around 1,300 students every year. So these can be a lot more specialized than the MBA. Like I said, the MBA is a general management degree that gives you an overview of different areas of business. These ones you can really focus in on something that's of interest to you. So these are just some examples that I pulled off the internet of different MSc courses that you can do. I mean, there are things that are more general, like the MSc in management, for example. That would be similar to an MBA, and sometimes people call it like a baby MBA course, which again is a general, it's a general degree. So you study some marketing, some finance, some human resources, but you'll be studying them from the beginning of your career. That's the main difference between MBAs and MScs that I'll get onto. But that MSc in management, for example, that's quite popular with people who did an undergraduate in something completely unrelated to business, like engineering or like pharmaceuticals or something like that. And then they want to get a sort of a business education to complement that. And then they'll do an MSc in management. But they can be much more focused. You can do things like marketing, human resources, finance, banking, organizational psychology, supply chain, whole range of different things. And that's just a few examples I pulled off the internet. So lots of different things. So there's one subject you're really, really interested in, you can study that in depth at an MSc level. As I said, these are designed for students coming straight from undergraduate. So normally for a master's degree, you don't need to have any work experience to do them. They're designed usually for people at the beginning of their career. So you'll be fairly young people who've just studied their undergraduate, maybe have a little bit of work experience, maybe done some internships or some part-time work or something like that. Bit different from the MBA students. She'll be much more experienced. They'll have a sort of minimum level of work experience that business schools will ask for. So that's the main difference between the actual student cohort on these programs anyway. Okay, so yeah, these are a few characteristics of MBA students. They tend to be a bit older than MSc students. I put 28, 29 plus, but it's a bit vague, but there's a real range. I mean, at CAS, for example, we've got somebody who's 27, I think we've got somebody who's 54. So that's maybe, the biggest group is going to be between 28 to 35, but around that you've got people with much more experience as well. And if you've gone to executive MBAs, they tend to be even more experienced than executive MBAs as well.